The shovel hit Amara Bennett before she could turn around. She fell hard, her face slamming into the cold October earth of the Catskill forest floor. Pine needles pressed into her cheek. Blood, warm, metallic, wrong, filled her mouth. Through blurred vision fragmenting at the edges, she saw them. Dylan Crawford and his two friends, silhouettes against the moonlight filtering through bare October branches. This was it. This was how she died. In the same woods where her parents had died 5 years ago, in a mysterious accident that was never solved. The woods she'd loved since childhood, where she'd learned the names of trees and birds and seasons. The woods that had always felt like sanctuary until tonight. Until Dylan's text had lured her here with a lie about needing to talk. Until she'd been stupid enough to come alone. Dylan crouched beside her, and she could see his face now, twisted with something that might have been regret or might have been rage. She couldn't tell anymore. Couldn't tell anything except that her body had stopped obeying her commands to move, to run, to fight. You really thought you could just cut me off, Amara? His voice cracked. Block my number? Tell your friends I was obsessed? Pretend like what we had meant nothing? She tried to speak. Her mouth wouldn't work. Blood bubbled instead of words. You should have just talked to me. Should have given me another chance. Now look what you made me do. Brett Holloway shifted his weight nervously, his wrestler's build somehow smaller in the darkness. Dylan, man, we need to go. Someone might have heard. Shut up. Dylan's eyes never left Amara's face. We're not done here. Marcus Reed stood furthest back, hands visibly shaking even from where Amara lay dying. This wasn't supposed to. Dylan, she's not moving. We need to call someone. We're not calling anyone. Dylan stood slowly, gripping the shovel tighter, and Amara watched through failing vision as he positioned it like he was going to swing again. We're going to make this look like an accident. She was hiking alone, slipped, hit her head on a rock. Simple. No one's going to question it. They'll say she was careless, just like her parents. The mention of her parents sent a spike of rage through Amara's fading consciousness. She wanted to scream that her parents hadn't been careless, that their deaths had never made sense, that she'd spent 5 years trying to prove it wasn't an accident. But her body betrayed her. And darkness crept in from the edges of her vision like a tide she couldn't fight. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I'm coming. Before we continue, can I ask you something? Where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your country or city in the comments. I love knowing where our stories travel to. And if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this story unfolds. Now let's continue. And in that exact moment, in a world separated by the impossible distance of 10 years, Kang Seo-jin sat alone in a modified Tesla sedan in an underground laboratory beneath Manhattan, surrounded by technology that shouldn't exist, his hand hovering over a red button that would shatter every law of physics he'd ever learned. On the wall behind him, muted news footage played on loop. Tech billionaire still prime suspect in triple disappearance. Wife and twin daughters missing 18 months, presumed dead. His hands shook so badly, he had to press them flat against his thighs. 18 months since Amara had vanished from their penthouse apartment with their 4-year-old twin daughters, Zoe and Isla. 18 months since police had found traces of blood in the living room and accused him of triple murder, despite having no bodies, no weapon, no evidence beyond the fact that he and Amara had argued the night before she disappeared. An argument about something so stupid, he couldn't even remember what it was, only that he'd let her walk away angry, let the last words between them be harsh ones. 18 months since his entire world had ended. The courts had frozen half his assets. The media had crucified him daily. His own mother had stopped taking his calls. But the worst part, the part that kept him awake every night, the part that had driven him to this moment of absolute insanity, was that he knew they were alive, somewhere, taken by someone. And no one believed him. So he'd done the impossible. $2 billion, the world's most brilliant quantum physicists, recruited in secret, paid enough to keep their mouths shut. 16 months of development while his trial dragged on, funded by the remnants of his fortune that the courts hadn't frozen. A machine that could fold space-time itself, that could take him back to the night before Amara disappeared. Back to a point where he could stop the argument, stop her from leaving, stop whatever had happened next. The machine hummed around him now, technology embedded in every surface of the car. displays showing energy readings that climbed steadily toward critical mass, equations scrolling past faster than he could read them even though he'd memorized them months ago. In the back seat, two wolves shifted restlessly. Ash, gray and scarred from the shelter where Seo-jin had found him 3 years ago, whined softly. Storm, younger and black as midnight, pressed against his brother for comfort. They'd been with Seo-jin through the trial, through the isolation, through the terrible months when he'd barely left this laboratory. They sensed something was wrong. "I know, boys," Seo-jin whispered in Korean, his voice cracking on the words. "I know this is crazy, but I can't just let them be gone. I can't." He pulled up a photo on his phone with trembling fingers. Amara laughing, her locks pulled back in the style she wore when she was working, holding their twin daughters on a beach in the Hamptons. Amara's voice in his ear from 1,000 remembered moments. "Whatever happens, we face it together. You and me and the girls. That's all that matters." Except they'd been torn apart. Stoon and the world thought he was a monster who'd killed his own family. Seo-jin closed his eyes, took a breath that shuddered in his chest, and pressed the button. The world exploded into light. The car lurched violently, and Seo-jin gripped the steering wheel as reality bent and folded and screamed around him. The laboratory disappeared, replaced by a tunnel of impossible colors, of time rendered visible, of every second he'd ever lived playing in reverse at speeds that should have torn his mind apart. The wolves yelped, their sounds distorted by the stretching of space-time itself. Seo-jin's stomach turned inside out, his vision fractured into 1,000 overlapping timelines, and for a terrible moment, he thought the machine had failed, thought it was going to kill him. The dashboard display flickered, temporal displacement active. The destination, March 15, 2023, 18 months ago. But then the numbers glitched, shifted, changed too fast to follow. Error, quantum interference detected, recalibrating, new destination, October 8, 2014, 10 years ago. "No," Seo-jin breathed, but the word was lost in the roar of collapsing space-time. "No, that's wrong. I need—" The car slammed into Earth with a force that would have killed him if the temporal field hadn't absorbed most of the impact. Trees materialized around him in the sudden shocking silence of arrival. Cold October air rushed through windows that had automatically opened to equalize pressure. The smell of pine and damp soil and something else underneath it, something copper and wrong. Blood. Seo-jin's hands were still locked on the steering wheel, his whole body shaking from the violence of the jump. Behind him, Shunta, Ash, and Storm scrambled to their feet, confused but unharmed by the temporal shielding he'd built into the car. Seo-jin forced his eyes to focus on the dashboard display, and his heart sank like a stone. Arrival confirmed. October 8th, 2014, 11:47 p.m. Location, Catskill Mountains, New York, 10 years ago. Not 18 months, not the night before Amara disappeared. 10 years before they had that fight. 6 years before Zoe and Isla existed. 10 years before any of the future he was trying to save had even begun. "No," he said again, slamming his fist against the steering wheel hard enough that pain shot up his arm. "This wasn't— I need to go back. I need to recalibrate. I need—" Ash growled low in his throat, the sound cutting through Seo-jin's spiral of panic. Storm's ears flattened against his skull, his body going rigid in the way it did when he sensed danger. And then Seo-jin heard it. Voices, male, aggressive, close enough that they must be within 50 yards of where the car had materialized behind a thick stand of pines. And beneath the voices, something worse. The terrible silence where there should have been breathing, should have been a scream, should have been something. Every instinct from his 2 years of mandatory Korean military service kicked in before his conscious mind could catch up. Seo-jin opened the car door as silently as possible, stepped out into the cold October night, and gestured for the wolves to follow. They moved like shadows beside him as he picked his way through the trees toward the voices, toward whatever was happening that had made his wolves sense danger. What he found froze the breath in his lungs. A young woman lay motionless on the forest floor, her face pressed into the earth, blood pooling dark and terrible beneath her head. 3 men stood around her, one holding a shovel, the other 2 hovering with the nervous energy of people who'd just realized they'd gone too far, that the thing they'd done couldn't be undone. The one with the shovel crouched down beside her. "You should have just talked to me, Amara." Seo Jin's entire world stopped. Amara, the woman on the ground, even unconscious, even broken and bleeding, even younger than she should be, he knew that face, would know it anywhere, in any timeline, in any version of reality. Younger, 20 instead of 30, her locks shorter, her face rounder with the softness of college years not yet lived, but unmistakable. His wife, the mother of his daughters, dying on the forest floor 10 years before he'd ever met her. A branch snapped under Seo Jin's foot, and the sound cut through the clearing like a gunshot. All three men whipped around. For a moment that stretched into eternity, no one moved. Seo Jin stood at the edge of the trees, flanked by two wolves whose lips had pulled back from their teeth in silent warning. The three men stared at him with the dawning realization that they'd been caught, that the night had just gotten infinitely more complicated. Dylan Crawford recovered first, standing slowly with the shovel still gripped in both hands. "Who the hell are you?" Seo Jin didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Amara's still form, on the blood that kept spreading in the dirt. Chuka on the terrible stillness of her chest, that meant she wasn't breathing right, wasn't getting enough oxygen, was dying in front of him. "I said, who the hell are you?" Dylan took a step forward, trying to project aggression he clearly didn't feel. "This is private property. You're trespassing." "Leave," Seo Jin said quietly, his English carrying the accent he'd worked years to soften but never quite eliminated. "Now." Brett grabbed Dylan's arm. "Dude, are those wolves? What the? We need to go, we can't just leave her." Dylan jerked his arm free, but his voice had gone high with panic. "She'll tell someone, she'll what?" Seo Jin stepped forward, and both wolves moved with him in perfect synchronization. "Tell the police that you tried to kill her?" "Yes, she will. Unless you want me to call them right now, I suggest you run." Marcus was already backing away, hands raised like he could ward off the situation. "Dylan, man, I'm out. This is done. I told you this was crazy. I told you—" "Shut up, Marcus." Dylan's voice cracked. He looked from Seo Jin to the wolves to Amara and back again, his face cycling through rage and fear and desperation. "You don't understand. We were together. She was mine and you don't get to— I don't care." Seo Jin cut him off. "Leave, or I release the wolves. Your choice." For a long moment, Dylan stared at him, then at Storm, who had begun to growl in a way that made the hair on Seo Jin's own arms stand up, then at Amara one more time. "This isn't over," Dylan hissed, but his hands were already loosening on the shovel. "You have no idea what you just— It's over," Seo Jin said flatly. "Go." Dylan threw the shovel down hard enough that it stuck in the earth a few feet from where it had been used as a weapon. Brett was already running. Marcus hesitated for just a second, looked at Amara with something that might have been regret, then turned and disappeared into the trees. Dylan lingered longest, his face working through emotions too fast to track. Then he ran. The sound of their retreat faded quickly, leaving only the rush of wind through bare branches and Amara's terrible, shallow breathing. Seo Jin crossed to her in 3 strides and dropped to his knees beside her. His hands shook as he reached out to check her pulse, weak and thready against his fingers, her skin already too cold. Blood matted her locks, soaked into the collar of her jacket, pooled on the ground beneath her head. Her eyes were closed, her face slack in a way that terrified him more than anything else. "Amara," he whispered, and heard his voice break on her name. "Amara, can you hear me?" Nothing. No response. Just that terrible, shallow breathing that told him she was alive but barely, that she was slipping away, that he was about to watch her die, and he had a choice to make. If he helped her, he could change everything. The timeline, causality, the future itself. He could erase his own daughters from existence, prevent the very marriage that had given him the only real happiness he'd ever known, create a paradox that might destroy them both. But if he didn't help her, she would die here, tonight, on October 8th, 2014, and there would be no future at all. No meeting 5 years from now at the environmental conference where she'd given the keynote speech that had made him fall in love with her passion before he'd even known her name. No first date where they'd talked until the restaurant closed around them. No proposal in the same Catskill Mountains where she'd grown up. No twin daughters with her eyes and his stubborn determination. No life together that had been imperfect and complicated and more precious than anything else in his world. She would just die, and the universe would continue without her, without them. Seo Jin looked at the wolves. Ash had moved to Amara's other side and was nudging her hand gently with his nose, whining in the way he did when he knew someone was hurt. Storm positioned himself between them and the direction Dylan had run, still on guard. "I know," Seo Jin whispered to them, to himself, to whatever force had sent him to this exact moment. "I know what we have to do." He slipped his arms carefully beneath Amara's shoulders and knees, lifting her as gently as possible though she was dead weight, her head lolling against his chest. She was lighter than his Amara, younger, her body not yet carrying the muscle she'd build over the next 10 years of field work and motherhood. But she was still her, still the woman he'd loved, still the mother his daughters needed to exist, still the person whose absence had broken him so completely that he'd built a machine to shatter time itself. "I've got you," he said softly, knowing she couldn't hear him but needing to say it anyway. "I've got you. You're going to be okay." With the wolves leading the way through the darkness, Seo Jin carried Amara deeper into the Catskill woods. His arms burned within minutes. Amara wasn't heavy, but dead weight was always harder to carry than someone who could help hold themselves. And Seo Jin's body was that of a billionaire who worked out in expensive gyms, not someone who regularly carried unconscious people through forests. His dress shoes, still the leather ones he'd been wearing in the laboratory because he hadn't thought about practical footwear when building a time machine, slipped on wet leaves and loose stones. Blood from Amara's head wound soaked through his shirt, warm and terrible against his chest. His mind raced in circles. What have I done? I was supposed to go back 18 months, find Amara and the girls before Victor Han's men took them, stop it from happening. Instead, I'm 10 years in the past, holding a woman who doesn't know me yet, who won't know me for another 5 years, who might die before we ever get the chance to meet. But she was dying. That was real. That was immediate. That was something he could actually fix with his own 2 hands, instead of abstract equations and quantum fields. The machine sat somewhere behind them, camouflaged by the temporal shielding that would make it invisible to anyone who looked directly at it, locked against anyone who tried to access it. He'd have to retrieve it later, somehow, when Amara was safe and he could think straight. Right now, Ash stopped abruptly, ears pricked forward. Storm circled back to position himself protectively next to Seo Jin. And both wolves focused on something ahead through the trees. Light, warm, and steady. Not moonlight, not flashlights. The yellow glow of windows lit from inside. A cabin. Seo Jin adjusted his grip on Amara and moved forward more carefully. The cabin materialized out of the darkness, small and rustic, smoke curling from a stone chimney, garden beds already covered for winter, a porch with rocking chairs that looked handmade. Lights burned in the windows. Someone was home. He had no plan, no story prepared, no explanation that would make sense. He climbed the porch steps and knocked. The door opened almost immediately, and an older black man stood in the frame. Late 60s, strong build despite his age, wearing flannel and work boots, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. His eyes went from Seo Jin's face to Amara's unconscious form, to the wolves and back again, processing the scene in less than a second. "Good Lord," he breathed. Then, louder, over his shoulder, "Clara, get the medical kit, now!" "She needs a hospital," Seo Jin started, his voice rough with exhaustion. I can't. Nearest hospital is 42 minutes and she won't make it with a head wound like that. Bring her inside, quickly now." The man, Henry, Seo Jin would learn later, stepped aside, and Seo Jin carried Amara into a cabin that smelled like wood smoke and cooking, and the kind of home he'd grown up believing didn't really exist outside of stories. An older black woman appeared from a back room, Clara, wearing a cardigan over a house dress, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She took one look at Amara and her entire demeanor shifted from domestic grandmother to the nurse she must have been in another life. Dining table, lay her flat. Henry, boil water and bring me clean towels. You. She focused on Seo Jin with the kind of direct gaze that saw through bullshit. What's your name? Seo Jin. Kang Seo Jin. I need you to hold pressure here. She guided his hands to the wound on Amara's head. While I assess the damage. Can you do that? Yes. Good. Don't let up the pressure. Henry, move! For the next 40 minutes, Seo Jin watched Clara Washington work with the kind of practiced efficiency that spoke of years in emergency rooms, years of seeing worse and pulling people back anyway. She cut away Amara's blood-soaked jacket, checked her pupils with a penlight, ran her hands carefully over ribs and limbs, checking for breaks, took her pulse and temperature and breathing rate while calling out numbers that meant nothing to Seo Jin, but clearly meant something to her. Henry assisted without needing to be told what to do, bringing supplies and following Clara's rapid-fire instructions with the synchronization of decades of marriage. The wolves settled in a corner, watching intently but not interfering. Finally, Clara sat back on her heels and let out a long breath. Severe concussion, 3 broken ribs that I can feel, possible punctured lung, though I don't hear it yet. She's hypothermic, temperature's down to 94 degrees. Blood loss is moderate, not critical yet. But we need to get it stopped completely. Will she? Seo Jin's voice caught. Will she make it? Clara looked at him properly for the first time, and something in her expression softened. She needs a hospital, but moving her in this condition could kill her just as easily as leaving her might. We stabilize her here tonight, keep her warm, monitor her breathing. In the morning, if she's stable enough, we make the call about transport. But she could die before morning. Yes, Clara said gently, she could. Which is why you and I are going to spend the night making sure she doesn't. Henry, help me move her to the spare bedroom. Seo Jin, you look like you're about to fall over. When's the last time you slept? Seo Jin tried to remember and couldn't. Days? Weeks? Time had lost all meaning in the laboratory. I can't sleep, I need to. You need to be useful, Clara cut him off. And you won't be useful if you collapse. Henry's going to show you where to clean up. There's blood all over you. Then you're going to eat something because I guarantee you haven't done that either. Then you're going to help me keep this girl alive, in that order. Something about the firm kindness in her voice made Seo Jin's throat close up. He managed a nod. They moved Amara to a small bedroom that must have been intended for guests who never came. Clara started an IV with supplies that seemed impossibly well stocked for a cabin in the woods, explaining as she worked that she'd been an emergency room nurse for 30 years before retiring, and old habits died hard. Henry built up the fire in the cast iron stove that heated the whole cabin. The wolves refused to leave Amara's side, settling on the floor next to the bed like sentinels. Seo Jin stood uselessly in the doorway, watching Clara adjust the IV flow and tuck heated blankets around Amara's too still form. His hands were shaking again, and he shoved them in his pockets so no one would see. Do you love her? Clara said, without looking up from her work. It wasn't a question. Yes, Seo Jin said, because there was no point lying. More than anything. How long have you known her? In some ways, forever. In others, I just met her tonight. Clara glanced at him then, and there was something knowing in her eyes. That's a strange thing to say. It's a strange situation. I imagine it is. She finished adjusting the blankets and turned to face him fully. That girl's alive because you found her at exactly the right moment. Whether you believe in God or fate or dumb luck, I don't much care. But I've seen enough in my years to know that sometimes people show up precisely when they're needed, and asking too many questions about why just gets in the way of accepting the gift. So I'm not going to ask you a lot of questions, but I am going to tell you this. If you want her to survive the night, you need to take care of yourself first. Can't pour from an empty cup, as my mother used to say. So go, wash, eat, then come back and help me keep watch. Seo Jin wanted to argue, but Clara had the kind of presence that didn't invite argument. And besides, she was right. He was running on fumes and desperation, and neither would keep him going much longer. Henry showed him to a small bathroom with old-fashioned fixtures and towels that smelled like lavender. Seo-jin peeled off his blood-soaked shirt and dress pants, catching his reflection in the mirror over the sink and barely recognizing himself. He looked like he'd aged a decade in the hours since pressing that button. His hands were stained red. His face was haggard. He washed methodically, Chuta watching Amara's blood swirl down the drain, trying not to think about timelines and paradoxes and all the ways this could go wrong. Henry left clean clothes outside the door, sweatpants and a thermal shirt that were too big in the shoulders but close enough. They smelled like wood smoke and detergent. When Seo-jin emerged, Clara had set food on the small kitchen table, vegetable soup and cornbread, simple and warm and exactly what his body needed, even though his mind insisted he couldn't eat. Henry sat across from him, nursing a cup of coffee, studying him with the patient gaze of someone who'd spent a lifetime reading people. "You gonna tell us what really happened out there?" Henry asked finally. Seo-jin swallowed a spoonful of soup and considered his option: lie and maintain the fiction that this was all somehow normal, or tell the truth and risk them thinking he was insane. "She was attacked," he said carefully. "3 men. Her ex-boyfriend and his friends, I believe so. I scared them off. With wolves." "With wolves?" Henry nodded slowly. "Those are trained animals, not wild. You raised them from pups?" "Rescued them 3 years ago. They've been with me ever since. And you just happened to be in these woods, with 2 rescue wolves, at the exact moment a young woman needed saving." It wasn't a question, but Seo-jin answered anyway. "No, I didn't just happen to be here. So you knew she was in danger?" "Not exactly. I was looking for something else, someone else. The machine." He stopped, realizing how insane it was going to sound. "I made a mistake, ended up in the wrong place, but it turned out to be exactly where I needed to be." Henry and Clara exchanged one of those married couple looks that communicated volumes without words. Clara spoke first. "You're not from around here." "No, I'm from..." "Where?" "The future, Manhattan, a timeline that might not exist anymore." "Far away, South Korea originally, but I've lived in New York City for the past 8 years. And you came all the way up to the Catskills to..." Henry let the sentence hang. "To find someone I lost. But like I said, wrong place, wrong time." Seo-jin met Henry's eyes. "I know how strange this sounds. I know you have no reason to trust me. But I swear to you, I'm not the one who hurt her, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure she survives." Henry studied him for a long moment. Then, "You military? Korean Army, 2 years mandatory service, combat engineering." "Thought so. You move like it. Should you carry yourself like someone used to taking orders and giving them?" Henry leaned back in his chair. "Clara and we've been out here 20 years. Came here to get away from the noise of the city, the violence, all the broken parts of the world we couldn't fix. Built this cabin ourselves, grow most of our own food, mind our own business. And in 20 years, we've seen a lot of strange things in these woods. But you?" He smiled slightly. "You might be the strangest thing yet." "I apologize for the intrusion." "Don't." Clara's voice was firm. "That girl's alive because you showed up, however you managed it. We're not going to question that. But we are going to ask, what happens when she wakes up? If you're still watching, drop a comment and let me know what you think is going to happen next. And don't forget to share this story with someone. Trust me, they're going to want to see where this goes." Seo-jin had been asking himself the same question for the past hour. "I don't know. Are you planning to tell her the truth about why you were really out there? What truth would that be?" Henry's eyes crinkled at the corners. "The one you're not saying. The one about whatever machine you mentioned that made a mistake. The one about being in the wrong place at the wrong time, except it was somehow exactly right." Seo-jin set down his spoon carefully. "If I told you the truth, you wouldn't believe me." "Try us," Clara said. And maybe it was exhaustion, or the surreal nature of the entire night, or the fact that these strangers had taken him in and saved Amara's life without asking for explanations. Maybe it was the kindness in their faces, or the way they'd created a home that felt like something out of a dream, or the simple fact that he'd been carrying this impossible secret for so long that it had become its own kind of weight. Whatever the reason, Seo-jin told them, He told them about the future, about meeting Amara 5 years from this night at a conference in Boston, where she'd given a presentation on forest conservation that had made his heart stop, about their first date that had lasted 6 hours, about falling in love so completely it had terrified him, about the proposal in these same mountains where she'd grown up, about their twin daughters, born 6 years later with her eyes and his smile, and a stubbornness that came from both of them. He told them about the disappearance, Shine about coming home to an empty apartment and blood on the living room floor, about 18 months of accusations and trials and frozen assets and a world that had decided he was a monster, about knowing somehow, bone deep, despite all evidence, that they were alive somewhere, taken by someone. He told them about the machine, about $2 billion and 2 years of work and physics that shouldn't be possible, about pressing a button intending to go back 18 months to stop the disappearance from happening, and instead arriving here now, 10 years too early. He told them about seeing Amara dying on the forest floor and making the choice to save her even though it might erase his daughters from existence, might create a paradox that destroyed them both, might change everything in ways he couldn't predict. When he finished, silence filled the cabin, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the distant hoot of an owl outside. Then Clara started laughing. Not mockery, not disbelief, just genuine warm laughter that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Henry?" she said, wiping her eyes. "You hearing this?" Henry was grinning. "I asked for the truth. I surely got it." "You don't believe me," Seo-jin said flatly. "Didn't say that." Henry's expression turned serious. "I said you gave us one hell of a story. Whether I believe it or not, well, I've learned in my 68 years that the world's a lot stranger than most people want to admit. I've seen things I can't explain, lived through moments that shouldn't have happened the way they did, and I learned a long time ago not to dismiss something just because it sounds impossible." Clara nodded. "I read a book once about a man who traveled through time to save the woman he loved. Story didn't end well for him, as I recall. He saved her, but he lost himself in the process." The words hit Seo-jin like a physical blow. What happened to him? He realized that you can't change the past without changing who you are, that every choice ripples forward, that love isn't about controlling time, it's about trusting it. They sat with that for a moment. Then Henry asked quietly, "So what are you going to do? Assuming your story's true, and I'm not saying it's not, you've got however long until your machine recharges. Days? Weeks? 72 hours and above?" Seo-jin said. 3 to 30 days, or even more. The temporal field needs to stabilize before it can make another jump. 3 days, Henry repeated. 3 days to decide whether you stay in this time or go back to yours. 3 days to figure out if saving her here changes anything about your future. 3 days to choose between the woman lying in that bed and the daughters who won't exist for another 6 years. "I have to go back," Seo-jin said, but his voice lacked conviction. "My wife, my daughters, Zoe and Isla, they're out there somewhere, alive, waiting for me to find them. I can't abandon them. They're 10 years away from existing," Clara pointed out gently. "But that girl in the spare room, she's here now, dying 3 hours ago, alive now because of you. Maybe your machine didn't malfunction. Maybe it sent you exactly where you needed to be. To save her so she can grow up to be kidnapped with my daughters? So I can spend 18 months accused of killing them all? That doesn't make sense. Doesn't have to make sense. Time rarely does." Henry stood, carried his coffee cup to the sink. "But I'll tell you what I learned teaching high school history for 30 years. Time isn't a straight line like we think it is. It's more like a river. It flows, it bends, it finds its own course. You can throw stones in and change the current for a moment, but the river's going to keep flowing. Maybe you being here tonight is one of those stones. Maybe it changes everything. Maybe it changes nothing. But either way, that girl's alive because you threw the stone. And that's something." Seo-jin wanted to argue, wanted to insist there had to be a plan, a way to fix everything, a path forward that didn't require impossible choices. But exhaustion was catching up to him, dragging at his thoughts, making it hard to think straight. Clara seemed to sense it. "Come on, I'll show you where you can rest. Not sleep, I know you won't, but at least sit somewhere comfortable while we keep watch. The spare bedroom was small and warm, heated by the wood stove whose chimney ran through the wall. Amara lay exactly as they'd left her, still as death, except for the shallow rise and fall of her chest. The IV dripped steadily. The wolves hadn't moved from their positions on either side of the bed. Clara had set up a chair near the headboard. Seo Jin sank into it gratefully, every muscle in his body aching in ways he hadn't noticed until he stopped moving. "I'll check on her every 2 hours," Clara said. "You call me if anything changes, if her breathing gets worse, if she starts to wake up, if anything seems wrong. Don't try to be a hero and handle it yourself. Understood?" "Understood." She paused in the doorway. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing, saving her, whatever that costs you down the line. She's alive because you chose her life over your certainty. Not many people would make that choice." Then she was gone, leaving Seo Jin alone with the woman he loved and the wolves who'd followed him through time. He reached out carefully and took Amara's hand, the one without the IV, her fingers limp and cold in his grip. Younger fingers, bikes without the calluses she'd developed from years of fieldwork, without the thin silver ring he'd given her on their first anniversary. "I don't know if you can hear me," he said softly in Korean, the language he'd always used for the things that mattered most. "I don't know if any part of you knows I'm here, but I need you to fight. I need you to survive this night, and the next one, and all the ones after that until you grow into the woman I met 5 years from now, until you become the mother of my daughters, until you become the person whose absence broke me so completely I shattered time to find you." Amara's face didn't change. Her breathing stayed shallow and pained. "I know this is selfish," Seo Jin continued. "I know I'm asking you to survive so you can grow up to meet me, to fall in love with me, to have my children, to be taken from me. I know that's a terrible thing to ask, but I also know that the time we had together was worth it. Every moment, every fight, every perfect, imperfect day. And our daughters, Zoe and Isla, they're worth it too. They're worth everything." Storm whined softly and rested his head on the bed near Amara's other hand. "The wolves like you," Seo Jin said, switching back to English. "They always have. Even in the future. Even when you're grown up and married to me and tired of me bringing stray animals home, you'll let me keep these two. You'll say they're part of the family, that they chose us." He fell silent, watching her breathe, counting each shallow inhale and praying for the next one. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, Clara came to check vitals. Pulse, weak but steady. Temperature, up to 96 degrees, still too low but improving. No signs of internal bleeding worsening. The IV bag was half empty. "She's stable," Clara murmured. "That's good. That's very good. When will she wake up? Could be hours, could be days. Head injuries are unpredictable." Clara adjusted the blankets. "But she's fighting, I can tell. This one's a fighter." "She is," Seo Jin agreed quietly. "In the future, she'll spend 18 months protecting our daughters from whoever took them. She'll keep them safe, keep them alive, keep them believing their father is looking for them. She'll survive hell to get back to us." Clara's hand settled briefly on his shoulder. "Then she'll survive this too. Get some rest, Seo Jin. You'll be no good to her exhausted." But Seo Jin didn't rest. He sat watch through the long, cold hours before dawn, holding Amara's hand, Wanku watching her breathe, and trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. The sun rose slowly, filtering through lace curtains and painting the room in shades of gold. The wolves stirred, stretched, padded to the door and back. Amara's breathing had grown steadier through the night, deeper, less labored. Her temperature was up to 97 degrees when Clara checked at 8 a.m. "She's improving," Clara said with quiet satisfaction. "Out of immediate danger, I'd say. Now we just wait for her to wake up." That happened on the 3rd day. Seo Jin had just returned from a walk with the wolves. Clara had insisted he get some air before he lost his mind from sitting still. When he heard Clara call his name from the cabin, he ran. Amara's eyes were open, confused and frightened and very much alive. "Easy, Chaku's sweetheart," Clara was saying, one hand on Amara's shoulder keeping her from sitting up too fast. "You're safe. You're in my home. You've been unconscious for 3 days. Where? Amara's voice was rough from disuse. What happened? You were attacked in the woods. Do you remember? Fragments of memory played across Amara's face. Fear, pain, Dylan's twisted expression. He hit me. Dylan hit me with a shovel. I know. But you're safe now. The man who found you scared them off. Clara glanced at the doorway where Seo-jin stood frozen. He's been here with you the whole time. Amara's eyes found him, and Seo-jin felt the impact of her gaze like a physical thing. She was looking at him the way someone looks at a stranger, because that's what he was to her. A stranger who'd saved her life for reasons she couldn't possibly understand. Who are you? She asked. Seo-jin stepped into the room slowly, careful not to crowd her. My name is Kang Seo-jin. I found you in the woods 3 nights ago. You were badly hurt. I brought you here to Henry and Clara's cabin. They saved your life. Why? Why did I bring you here? Why did you help me at all? It was a fair question, one he didn't have a good answer for. Not one she'd believe. Because I couldn't watch you die, he said simply. Amara studied him with those eyes he knew so well, even though she didn't know him at all. Do I know you? No, not yet. Then why do you keep looking at me like that? Like what? Like you. You're looking at someone you have known for years. Seo-jin's throat closed. Of course she'd noticed. Of course, even in this younger, injured version of herself, she'd still have that ability to read people, to see through bullshit, to ask the questions that mattered. Because I am, he said quietly. I just didn't know I'd lost her until I found her again. Clara cleared her throat. I'm going to give you two some time to talk. Amara, honey, you're safe here. Seo-jin's not going to hurt you. Neither are those wolves. Yes, there are wolves, don't panic. They're trained and they're friendly. I'll bring you some broth in a bit. You need to get your strength back. She squeezed Amara's hand and left, closing the door softly behind her. Amara looked from Seo-jin to the wolves to the IV in her arm and back. This is really weird. I know. Are you going to tell me what's really going on? Because I'm pretty sure I couldn't watch you die isn't the whole story. Seo-jin pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. Ash came over and rested his head on Seo-jin's knee. Storm stayed near the door, still on guard. If I told you the whole story, Seo-jin said carefully, you wouldn't believe me. Try me. I just woke up from a 3-day coma in a stranger's cabin with wolves in the room. My bar for believability is pretty low right now. Despite everything, Seo-jin almost smiled. This was the Amara he knew, sharp and direct and refusing to accept easy answers. All right, but you asked for this. He took a breath. I'm from the future. 10 years from now, to be exact. I built a machine that can travel through time because the woman I love, my wife, and our twin daughters disappeared 18 months ago. I was trying to go back to stop it from happening, but the machine malfunctioned and sent me here instead, to this exact moment. And when I arrived, I found you dying in the woods. Silence. Amara blinked slowly. That's actually insane. I know. You're saying you're from 2024? Yes. And I'm your wife in the future? Yes. And we have twin daughters? Zoe and Isla. They're 4 years old, or they will be, or... He stopped, the temporal mechanics making his head hurt. Yes, we have daughters. Amara was quiet for a long moment, watching his face. Then, what's my name? My full name? Amara Bennett. You're 20 years old right now. You go to SUNY New Paltz studying environmental science. Your parents died in a car accident in these same woods 5 years ago. You have a scar on your left shoulder from falling out of a tree when you were 12. You drink your coffee black and you hate mornings, and your favorite color is the specific shade of green that leaves turn in October. Amara's face had gone very still. Ma, how do you know all that? Because you told me. You'll tell me. 5 years from now, we're going to meet at a conference in Boston. You'll be giving a presentation on forest conservation, and I'll be there representing my company's environmental division. You'll make me laugh within the first 5 minutes. We'll talk for 6 hours after your presentation ends, and I'll fall in love with you before the night is over. That's... Amara's voice caught. That's a very specific story for something you made up. I didn't make it up. Time travel isn't real. It wasn't. Until I made it real. Why? Because I couldn't accept losing you, losing them. I couldn't accept that the world thought I'd killed my own family when I knew they were out there somewhere, alive, waiting for me to find them. Seo-jin's hands clenched in his lap. So I spent $2 billion and 16 months building something that shouldn't exist, and it worked. Just not the way I expected. Amara was quiet, processing. Then, if you're really from the future, prove it. How? Tell me something only I would know, something that hasn't happened yet. Seo-jin thought for a moment. Next week, you're going to get a call from your academic advisor. He'll tell you that you've been accepted to present at the Undergraduate Research Symposium in Albany. You've been working on a paper about wolf population recovery in the Catskills. You're going to be terrified of public speaking, but you'll do it anyway. And that presentation will be the first step toward the career that eventually brings you to that conference in Boston where we meet. Amara's eyes had gone very wide. I just submitted that paper 3 days ago. Before Dylan, she stopped. No one knows about it yet. My advisor hasn't even read it. He'll read it tomorrow. He'll call you next Tuesday at 2:15 in the afternoon. You'll be in the library when your phone rings and you'll almost drop it because you'll be so surprised. This is insane, Amara whispered. I know. If this is true, if you're really from the future, then you being here, saving me, you could have changed everything. What if I was supposed to die that night? What if by saving me, you erased your own future? I know, it's possible. Then why did you do it? Seo-jin met her eyes. Because I love you. I will always love you. In any timeline, in any version of reality, whether you know me or not. And I couldn't stand there and watch you die. Not even to preserve a future that might not exist anymore. If you're still with me, share this story with someone who loves a good plot twist. I promise, we're just getting started. The next week passed in a strange kind of suspended reality. Amara recovered slowly, her strength returning day by day. The broken ribs kept her moving carefully, and the concussion meant she tired easily. But Clara's nursing skills and Henry's gentle care saw her through the worst of it. Seo-jin stayed. Even though every logical part of his brain screamed that he should retrieve the machine and leave before he caused more damage to the timeline. But he couldn't bring himself to go. Not yet. Not while Amara was still healing, still vulnerable, still looking at him with that mixture of disbelief and something else he couldn't quite name. He made himself useful around the cabin, throwing himself into manual labor he'd never done in his life, chopping wood for the stove, fixing the leak in the roof that Henry had been meaning to get to, clearing the garden beds for winter, drawing water from the well. His hands blistered and his muscles ached, and he'd never felt more grounded in his entire life. Henry taught him how to split logs properly, how to sharpen an axe, how to read the weather by watching the way birds moved. Clara taught him to cook simple meals, stews and breads and things that didn't come from restaurants or takeout containers. The wolves adapted to farm life, protecting the chickens that scratched in the yard, playing with Henry's old dog, ranging through the woods and always coming back. Amara watched him from the porch when she was strong enough to sit up, so he could be wrapped in blankets against the October chill. She watched him split wood with the kind of focused determination that came from channeling grief into physical work. Watched him fail at cooking and try again. Watched him sit by the fire at night with the wolves at his feet, staring into the flames like they held answers. On the 6th day, she finally asked, "What was I like in the future?" Seo-jin looked up from the firewood he'd been stacking. Strong, brilliant, stubborn as hell. You spent your whole career fighting for forest conservation, protecting the places that couldn't protect themselves. You never backed down from a fight, even when you should have. You were... He smiled slightly. You were magnificent. Was? Are. Will be. He shook his head. Say, tenses get complicated when you're talking across time. What about our daughters? What are they like? Seo-jin's chest ached. Zoe's the brave one. Fearless. She'll climb anything, jump off anything, try anything once. She has your eyes and your laugh. Isla's quieter, more thoughtful. She notices things other people miss. She has my stubbornness, but your kindness. They're—" his voice broke. "They're perfect, both of them. You miss them. Every second of every day." Amara was quiet for a moment. Then, "I don't remember most of what happened that night with Dylan, but I remember you. I remember opening my eyes for just a second when you were carrying me through the woods, and I remember thinking I must be dying because I felt safe, and I hadn't felt safe in so long." Seo-jin crossed to the porch steps, sat down a few feet from her chair, close but not crowding. "Dylan's not coming back. I made sure of it." "How?" "I told him if he ever came near you again, I'd release the wolves, and he believed me." "Would you have? Released them?" "Yes." Amara studied his face. "You would have let them hurt him. I would have let them protect you. There's a difference, is there?" "Yes." Seo-jin's voice was firm. "Protection isn't about violence. It's about making sure the people you love are safe, whatever that takes, even if it means changing time itself, especially then." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set behind the mountains, painting the October leaves in shades of gold and crimson. Then Amara said quietly, "I've been thinking about what you told me, about the future, about us, and I don't know if I believe all of it. Time travel is still insane, but I believe that you believe it. I believe you're here for a reason, and I believe—" She paused. "I believe you saved my life not just because of who I am to you in the future, but because of who I am right now, and that matters." "It does," Seo-jin agreed. "But you're going to leave, aren't you? When your machine recharges." "I have to. My daughters are depending on you to find them, I know." Amara wrapped the blanket tighter around herself. "How much longer?" 24 hours. The machine completes its recharge cycle tomorrow night. And then you go back to 2024 and hope they're still there waiting for you." "Yes." "What if saving me here changed things? What if you get back and find out Zoe and Isla never existed?" It was the fear that had kept Seo-jin awake every night for the past week. "Then I'll deal with it. But I have to try." Amara nodded slowly. "I understand. I think if someone took my children, even children I haven't had yet, I'd tear the world apart to get them back too." The next evening, as the sun set on Seo-jin's last day in 2014, Clara made a special dinner: roasted chicken and vegetables from the garden, fresh bread, apple pie for dessert. They ate at the small kitchen table, all five of them: Henry and Clara, Seo-jin and Amara, and the wolves lying on the floor hoping for scraps. "This is the best meal I've had in years," Seo-jin said honestly. "Better than any restaurant in Manhattan." Henry grinned. "That's because it's made with love, son. Can't get that from a 5-star menu." After dinner, they sat by the fire. Henry told stories about his years teaching, about the students who'd surprised him, about the way education could change lives if you gave people the space to learn. Clara talked about her years in the ER, about the lives saved and the lives lost, and the strange peace she'd found in these mountains after decades of chaos. Amara listened quietly, her eyes moving between the older couple and Seo-jin, something thoughtful in her expression. Finally, around 10 o'clock, Henry said, "Seo-jin, walk with me for a minute." They stepped out onto the porch, leaving the women inside. The October night was cold and clear. Stars scattered across the sky in patterns Seo-jin had forgotten existed in a world with too much light pollution. "You love this," Henry said. It wasn't a question. "What?" "This. The simplicity of it. The work, the food, the quiet, the way time moves differently out here." Seo-jin couldn't deny it. "Yes, I do. I didn't realize how much I needed this until I had it. Clara and we chose this life 40 years ago. Walked away from careers and money and all the things people told us mattered, and we've never regretted it. Not once." Henry leaned against the porch railing. "But we made that choice together. We had each other. You're about to go back to a world where you're facing everything alone. I have to find my wife, my daughters. I know. I'm not saying don't go. I'm saying remember this. Remember what it feels like to slow down, to do work with your hands, to sit by a fire with people who care about you. Because whatever you find when you get back, whether your girls are there or not, whether the timeline's changed or not, you're going to need something to hold on to, something that reminds you what matters." Seo-jin felt his throat close up. "Thank you." For everything. For taking us in, for saving her, for treating you like family? Henry smiled. That's what we do. It's who we are, and you. He clapped Seojin on the shoulder. You're a good man. Whether you came from the future or not, whether your story's real or not, you're a good man who saved a young woman's life. That's all that matters to me. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Seojin said, I wish I'd met you years ago, before I became what I am now. Maybe I would have made different choices. You made the choices you needed to make to become the man who could build a time machine to save his family. Don't regret that. Just remember, there's more than one way to be strong. Inside, Clara was showing Amara photos in an old album. Their wedding, their children who lived far away now, the cabin being built log by log. Amara was laughing at something Clara said, and the sound hit Seojin like a physical blow. He'd heard her laugh 1,000 times in the future, but somehow it sounded different here. Younger, to less weighted by all the things that hadn't happened to her. Clara caught his eye and smiled knowingly. An hour later, when Clara and Henry had retired to their bedroom, Seojin and Amara sat on the porch in the old rocking chairs, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars. I have to tell you something, Amara said quietly, and I want you to just listen, okay? Don't interrupt. Okay. She took a breath. I've been thinking a lot this past week about what you said, about the future, about us, about our daughters, and I still don't know if I fully believe the time travel part. My brain keeps trying to find rational explanations, but what I do believe is this. Something brought you to those woods at the exact moment I needed you. Whether that's a machine from the future or just blind chance or something else entirely, I don't know. But you saved my life, and in the process, you showed me something I didn't know I needed to see. What's that? That it's okay to accept help. That it's okay to let people care about you. That being strong doesn't mean being alone. Amara's voice was steady. Dylan made me feel like I had to handle everything myself. Like asking for help made me weak, and I believed that. But this past week, watching you help Henry with the roof and learn to cook with Clara and just be part of something instead of standing apart from it, I realized that's what I want. Not to do everything alone, but to find people who make life worth living. Seojin swallowed hard. You'll find that. I promise. Will I find it with you? 5 years from now, yes. What if I don't want to wait 5 years? Seojin looked at her in surprise. What? What if I want to know you now? Not future me falling in love with future you. Me, right now, getting to know the person who traveled through time to save me. Amara, we can't. The timeline might already be changed, she finished. Right? You being here, saving me, spending this week with me, maybe that already changed everything. Maybe your daughters won't exist no matter what you do. Or maybe they will. Maybe time is more flexible than you think. Maybe the future finds a way to happen regardless. I can't risk it. I can't risk them. I know, and I'm not asking you to stay. I know you have to go back, have to try to find them, but I am asking you to tell me the truth about one thing. What? Do you wish you'd never come here? Never saved me? If you could go back and land in 2023 like you planned, would you? Seojin thought about it honestly. About the past week of chopping wood and failed cooking and quiet conversations by the fire. About watching Amara heal. About the wolves playing in the yard. About Henry's stories and Clara's wisdom. About feeling more grounded and real than he had in years, despite being 10 years away from everything he knew. No, he said finally. I wouldn't change it. Even if saving you means I lose everything else, I wouldn't change this week. Amara smiled slightly. Good. Because I wouldn't change it either. They sat in silence for a while longer. Then Amara said, When you go back, if you find our daughters, will you tell them about me? About this version of me? I'll tell them their mother was brave and strong and kind even when she was just 20 years old and healing from something terrible. I'll tell them she survived. Tell them, Amara's voice caught. Tell them I loved them, even before I knew them, even before I knew they'd exist. Tell them that. I will. At midnight, Seojin stood and helped Amara to her feet. She was strong enough to walk now, though she still moved carefully because of the ribs. I should go, he said. The machine. I know. Amara reached out and took his hand, and the touch sent electricity through him. Thank you. For everything. For saving me. For this week. For believing in a future where I'm strong enough to be someone's wife and someone's mother. You're already strong enough. You've always been strong enough. She stood on her toes, carefully because of the ribs, and kissed his cheek. Find them. Find our daughters. Bring them home. And when you do, tell future me that past me is rooting for all of you. Seo Jin's eyes burned. I will. He called the wolves. Ash and Storm had been sleeping on the porch, but they came immediately when he whistled. They'd miss this place, he thought. They'd miss the simplicity, the space to run, the old dog they'd befriended. But they followed him anyway, loyal as always. The walk back to where he'd left the machine took 40 minutes. It was exactly where he'd left it, shimmering slightly as the temporal field prepared for departure. The door unlocked at his touch. Seo Jin turned for one last look at the forest that had been his home for a week. Somewhere behind him, Amara was making her way back to the cabin, to Clara and Henry, to the life she'd continue living. In 5 years, she'd graduate. In 7, she'd get her master's degree. In 9, she'd present at a conference in Boston where a certain Korean CEO would fall in love with her presentation before he fell in love with her. Or maybe none of that would happen now. Maybe he'd changed everything by being here, but he'd saved her. That was real. That was something he could hold on to regardless of what came next. All right, boys, he said to the wolves. Let's go find our girls. The wolves jumped into the back seat. Seo Jin settled into the driver's seat, pulled up the temporal controls, and set the destination. October 9th, 2024. The present, his present, the world where his daughters were waiting. He pressed the button. The world exploded into light and sound, and the sensation of falling through every moment at once. The forest disappeared, replaced by that impossible tunnel of compressed time. The machine shuddered and groaned, fought its way through space-time like a ship through a storm. And then, silence, solid ground. The laboratory. Seo Jin's laboratory in Manhattan, exactly as he'd left it except for the thin layer of dust that said only hours had passed here, despite the week he'd lived in the past. The wolves scrambled out, disoriented but unharmed. Seo Jin's hands shook as he checked the displays. Arrival confirmed, October 9th, 2024, 3:47 a.m. Time elapsed since departure, 3 hours, 22 minutes. He'd been gone less than 4 hours in present time, despite living a week in the past. Seo Jin's phone had 17 missed calls, all from his lawyer. He called back with shaking hands. Where have you been? Marcus Chen, his lawyer, not to be confused with the Marcus from 2014, sounded frantic. I've been trying to reach you for hours. There's been a development, a huge development. What happened? The charges have been dropped, all of them. They found evidence that you were framed, and Marcus paused, and they found Amara. Seo Jin's world stopped. What? She escaped 2 weeks ago. She's been in FBI protective custody while they built the case. She wouldn't let them contact you until they could guarantee your safety too. But she's alive, Seo Jin. Amara and the girls, they're all alive. The phone slipped from Seo Jin's hand. Alive. All 3 of them. Alive. The next 6 hours blurred together. The FBI debrief. The explanation that Victor Han, Seo Jin's business rival, had orchestrated the kidnapping to force Seo Jin to sign over his company. That Amara had been held in a private compound upstate, had protected the girls for 18 months, had finally escaped when a guard made a mistake during a transfer. That she'd asked about Seo Jin every single day. That she'd told Zoe and Isla their father was looking for them. That he'd never stop looking, that he'd find them eventually. And then, finally, the hospital. Seo Jin stood outside the private room where they were being kept safe, his hands shaking so badly he could barely open the door. But when he did, Amara looked up from the bed where she'd been reading to the girls, and her face crumpled. Seo Jin. And then the girls were running to him, Zoe and Isla, 4 years old and alive and real, and he dropped to his knees to catch them both, pulling them against his chest hard enough that they squeaked in protest. Appa! Isla's voice in his ear. Appa, you found us! Mommy said you would. Zoe, one always bolder, pulling back to look at his face. Why are you crying? Because I'm happy, Seojin managed. Because I'm so happy. Amara had crossed the room, and then she was there too. Her arms around all three of them, and they stayed like that for a long time. A family reunited, broken pieces fitting back together. Later, when the girls had fallen asleep on the hospital bed between them, Amara and Seojin sat in the chairs by the window, holding hands, not quite believing this was real. I need to tell you something, Seojin said quietly. Something that happened while you were gone. Something impossible. Okay. So he told her. About the machine. About pressing the button. About landing 10 years in the past. About finding her younger self dying in the woods. About the week he'd spent in 2014. And about Henry and Clara Washington. About choosing to save her, even though it might have cost him everything. When he finished, Amara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Describe the cabin. What? The cabin where the Washingtons lived. Describe it. Seojin did. The stone chimney, the lace curtains, the wood stove, the rocking chairs on the porch, the way the October light came through the windows. Amara's hand tightened on his. I need to tell you something too. Something I've never told anyone, not even you. Okay. When I was 20, I was attacked in the woods by my ex-boyfriend and his friends. I don't remember most of it. The head injury caused some memory loss. But I remember waking up in a cabin with an older couple named Henry and Clara Washington. And I remember... She paused. I remember a man with 2 wolves, a Korean man who spoke with an accent, who told me I was going to be okay, who looked at me like he was seeing someone he loved. Seojin stopped breathing. I stayed with the Washingtons for 2 weeks while I healed, Amara continued. The man, he stayed too for about a week. Then he left. I tried to find him after, tried to thank him properly, but I could never find the cabin again. It was like it had disappeared. And Henry and Clara, when I tried to look them up later, I found their obituary. They died in a car accident 6 months after that night. The same way your parents died, Seojin whispered. The same way, in the same woods. Amara looked at him with tears streaming down her face. I spent years thinking I'd imagined him, the man with the wolves, that it was a hallucination from the head injury, or a dream, or my brain trying to make sense of trauma. But he was real, wasn't he? Yes. He was real. It was you. You came back and saved me. You spent a week teaching me that it was okay to accept help, okay to not be alone. And when you left, I spent the next 10 years looking for that feeling again, looking for someone who saw me the way you did that week. And you found me, Seojin said. No, I found you again. I'd already found you once. I just didn't realize it until now. Amara pressed her forehead against his. You saved me twice. Once when I was 20 and dying. Once when I was 30 and trapped. You broke time itself to make sure I survived. To make sure our daughters existed. To make sure we had a future. I'd do it again, Seojin said fiercely. They said I'd do it 1,000 times. They held each other while the girls slept. While the dawn broke over Manhattan. While the future they'd fought so hard for finally caught up to them. A week later, when Amara and the girls had been released from FBI protection, and the media storm had died down enough to breathe, Seojin took them upstate, to the Catskills, to the woods where it had all begun. The cabin wasn't there anymore. Clara and Henry had died years ago, just like Amara said. And the property had been sold, and the cabin torn down. But there was a marker, a small plaque placed by some historical society noting that Henry and Clara Washington had lived there for 20 years, had been pillars of the community, had helped countless people over the years. They saved my life, Amara said softly, running her fingers over the plaque. Both of them. They saved mine too, Seojin said. Taught me what really matters. Zoe and Isla ran through the woods with the wolves, their laughter echoing off the trees. They didn't know this story yet, not all of it. They were too young to understand time travel and parallel timelines, and the impossible choices their father had made. But someday, Seojin would tell them about the week he spent in the past, about the woman he'd saved who became their mother, about the older couple who'd taught him that love wasn't about controlling time, but trusting it. What happened to the machine? Amara asked. The time machine? I destroyed it, Seojin said. I erased all the research, scrapped all the equipment, made sure no one could ever build it again. Why? Because some things aren't meant to be repeated, only remembered. He pulled her close. I have everything I need right here, right now. I don't need to change the past anymore. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't gone back? If you hadn't saved 20-year-old me? Every day. But I think... He paused, watching their daughters play. I think time would have found a way. Maybe someone else would have saved you. Maybe you would have saved yourself. Maybe the universe wanted us to happen, and it would have made sure we did regardless. Or maybe, Amara said softly, you were always meant to go back. Maybe the timeline was always supposed to include you showing up in 2014. Maybe we were always supposed to meet twice. Once when I was 20 and once when I was 25. Maybe it all had to happen exactly the way it did to get us here. I like that version, Seojin said. They stood together in the woods, a family that had been torn apart and put back together, watching their daughters play with the wolves who'd followed them through time. And somewhere, in some version of the universe, Henry and Clara Washington were smiling. Because they'd been right. Time was like a river. You could throw stones in and change the current for a moment, but the river kept flowing, kept finding its way to where it needed to be. And sometimes, just sometimes, the wrong turn was exactly right. Before you go, I want to ask you one last time. If you've made it this far, if this story moved you, please share it. Stories like this need to be passed on. And subscribe if you haven't already, because there are more stories coming that I promise you won't want to miss. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing, even for a moment, that love can break the rules of time itself.
K Afro Tales. The weak will become strong one day.